Nice to see you. Want to have a look today at something that I'm calling situational entropy. And the reason for that title is that I want to look at entropy in terms of the physics as we understand it, but also in applying it to situations that we experience directly in our own reality. These aspects are really important to be able to bridge the quantum mechanical aspects of reality and the human experience, i.e. the reality that we go through on our own world line, as it were. Everything has a world line. That's a tractor, it's got a world line. Particles have world lines. They can be very, very tiny. The world line of a particle can be infinitesimally tiny to nanoseconds, little fractions of seconds. But it's still a world line. It's still a period of time in which that particle exists. Now we have a world line that covers quite a span of years. If we live to be 100, we're doing really well. That's pretty incredible. And of course the planets and the stars, they also have world lines, and their world line is correspondingly enormous, billions and billions of years, that are unfathomable to us. We cannot compute. It's as if we as human beings kind of sit somewhere in the middle between the infinitesimally small and the gargantuan huge aspects of the universe in which we live. This is Brownian motion. Brownian motion was come up with a long time ago to describe the movement of particles within a fluid environment. And the researchers, there were a number of them, they looked at the movement of these particles and tracked those movements as individual singularities particles through this fluid or gas or whatever it was that they were experimenting upon, and found that these random tracks are what is essentially occurring for every particle that's within that containment, that body of fluid or gas or whatever it is. And from there was determined that the whole atom molecule construct had to be there even though it was invisible. And even now we have electron microscopes, but we still can't see quarks. So Brownian motion was found to apply because atoms and molecules are bouncing around off each other all the time, whether you can see them or not. Now that's a state of play that we could really say applies to us in some ways, because we don't know what the situations, events, circumstances, people are going to be that come along and buffet us through life in one direction or another. So you could say really that life isn't a clear path. You don't go from A to B to C in a straight line. Life has a lot of curves and curveballs and unexpected corners to turn. So we kind of relate to this system in our own right, in a situational kind of way. This is radiation. Radiation is something that you're going to be very familiar with. Essentially, it's what radiates from a source outwards. And that can be very complex, as in black body radiation, which you can look up, which a lot of physicists were involved with. And the whole thermodynamic radiation system, second law of thermodynamics is what relates that to entropy. So what essentially you have in relation to entropy with radiation is the movement of an energy, let's say heat, from a point where it's hot through to the colder points, so that everything evens itself out. There's an equilibrium eventually between the hot part and the colder parts, and everything becomes warm. So that's how entropy relates to thermodynamics and the second law. But radiation for us can happen in lots of different ways. We can radiate energy, we can radiate mood, emotion, we can radiate positivity, and we can radiate negativity, of course. Um, how we radiate and what we do with that radiation is very much part and parcel of the way we live and how other people relate to us in the way we live. But our relationships with each other and the world around us, they're important in terms of personal maintenance, because we would like to be able to maintain an environment in which we can operate comfortably. We can make progress in our own right in a relaxed, calm fashion. That's ideal, that's what we want. So for us, it's conscious. If we're the source, we can balance out the energies that are incoming with our own. That's essentially what we're looking for. We're looking for an equilibrium of frequency. That's where we're happiest in our social environments. These two things describe the waveform. Now, I've looked into waveforms in some depth in previous videos, so have a rummage around at those. Essentially what we've got here is a description of waveforms in relation to their amplitude and how they cooperate or otherwise with each other. This is destructive interference, and this is where the waves come together, the peaks clash, and they make this kind of strange loopy system. When they're destructive, they're cancelling each other out. Ultimately, the amplitude of the wave is going to be crushed by this peak and trough interference. So that's why it's called destructive. It destroys the amplitude. Constructive interference. Again, it's a wave pattern. You can see the waves here, but they are now in alignment with each other. There's a coherence. You could be seen to be constructive in the way in which you're moving. And that's not only more pleasant than this clashing business, it also increases the amplitude. In physics, that's what's happening here, this lilac line that's running through these waves. They combine their energy and they increase the amplitude of what it is that they're actually radiating. And being able to relate destructive and constructive wavelengths to our own relationships is, I think, quite valuable. There's an element of being able to bring in, there's an example, let's say, of being able to bring in the experience that we have and the physics that explains that experience in some way. Entanglement, then. Entanglement is a tricky one for everybody, because essentially what we're saying with entanglement is that two particles are twinned with each other. Any kind of reaction to their outside environment will be shared by these two particles irrespective of the distance between them. So they can be anywhere in the universe, but they will still share a response to stimuli, whichever of those particles receives it. Now, this is quite an interesting conundrum, because it begs questions of the speed of light constant, so it's not very popular on that front. Can information be exchanged via entanglement? So we don't know about that either. What we do know is that it happens. This entanglement system, because it's instantaneous, and it's obviously a very, very powerful connection that gets set up between these particles. And there is no limit to how many of these entangled particles there can be. Entanglement is found everywhere in all sorts of contexts throughout the explorations of science. And biology and chemistry are not immune to discovering entanglement problems. That leads kind of neatly, if you like, to the question of cause and effect. Because if we've all got a potential to share some kind of entanglement with other entities, other beings, other things, atomically or psychologically or somewhere in between, maybe there's a thought-on out there. I do think there's a thought-on, I think we just haven't found it yet. Then this correlates to our own experience as well, our situational experiences. We can become entangled with a situation or a person at any point in time, and that situation or person, their impact on us and our impact on them can remain entangled for an indefinite period of time, sometimes for life, but it doesn't have to be. We can still be entangled with a situation on a temporary basis, just as particles can be entangled on a temporary basis. You can disentangle an entangled particle. Cause and effect then, if I pick up this jug of water, which I hadn't planned to do, but I'll do it anyway, and I pour it on the floor, like that. However much I want that water to come back into the jug, it can't happen because of entropy. Entropy moves us forward into this next state of equilibrium all the time. Can't be reversed. Except that there is something called syntropy. And that's the last thing here on this board. You've seen, because I've drawn them in other videos, examples of syntropic time within the Feynman's diagram. Inside a Feynman's diagram is a system of entropy and syntropy working in tandem with each other. I've done a whole video on syntropy, and it's quite funny, so you can have a look at that. If you rummage around in the vaults, you'll find the syntropy video. That effectively tells us that whatever it is that's coming to us from the future is equally already there as what has happened in the past. We don't choose everything. It wouldn't be possible for us to choose everything. There are great arguments raging out there about whether we choose our reality or not. Whether we have free will at all is another. And these arguments beg the questions of quantum mechanics, because these are the kind of terms that relate to that question of how we exist, why we exist the way we do, and how we can better serve our existence in order to gain benefits and to give benefits. Give, take. Yeah? It's a constant two-way street. There's no such thing in the universe as a free lunch, so we might as well get used to that and live with what we're given of this remarkable, miraculous existence the best way we can. So I hope this has been useful and that you've enjoyed being with me for a little while. Don't forget to do whatever it is that you'd like to do next. Hopefully it's going to involve being part of the journey with us in some way. Love you loads. Bye.